Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Impact Farming Show. Today, we have a very special guest. We have Dr. Dave Kohl. Dr. Dave, how are you?
Doing great today. Thank you.
Good, good. You guys, I'm going to say a short title, and then I'm going to tell you more about Dr. David Kohl. I'm going to say he's an agriculture and farm business management economics legend. We could just leave it at that. And I'm actually going to go in and share a little bit about his bio because it's impressive and it's going to set the stage for the wealth of information that he's going to share with us. No pressure, okay? So Dr. Dave Kohl is an academic Hall of Famer in the College of Agriculture at Virginia Tech, Blacksburg, Virginia. Dr. Kohl has keen insight into the agriculture industry gained through extensive travel, research, involvement in egg businesses. He has traveled over 10 million miles, conducted more than 7,000 presentations, and published more than 2,500 articles. Dr. Kohl's wisdom and engagement with all levels of the industry provides a unique perspective into future trends. I wanted to share that because wealth of information. And when I say legend, I'm not joking. So let's dive in. Welcome, welcome. Would you like to maybe add on that, share a little bit about who you are, your background as well?
Yeah. It's real interesting, Tracy. I grew up 30 miles from the Canadian border in upstate New York, right across from Ottawa, Canada. And I grew up on a dairy farm, small rural community. And, it's real interesting. My goal was to play football in the CFL. And I wanted to play for the Winnipeg Blue Bombers
Oh,
because
wow.
at that time they'd won three Grey Cup championships and Bud Grant. And it's one of the things my wish almost came true. I tried out for the Ottawa Rough Riders at that time. They had a guy by the name of Russ Jackson. And I eventually got cut from the team because they had too many Americans. And so that is kind of my connection. But we would always go to Canada and we were always involved. I grew up there and went to university, received my degree or undergraduate degree in business, played basketball, coached basketball at a university level. And then my life shifted and I earned my master's and doctorate in economics at Cornell University. And then we headed south. I had three teaching opportunities or, university positions, Tracy. One in California had an offer, one in Wisconsin, selected Virginia Tech because actually a banker came to my interview. He wrote my wife and I a personal letter and said, if you will come to Virginia Tech and we will support you. And it was the lowest offer. But guess what? I'm still at Virginia Tech decades later and taught over 10,000 students undergraduate at Virginia Tech and Cornell. And I taught small business entrepreneurship, agricultural finance, and agricultural problem solving. And we tried to make the classes, real practical. I also do a significant amount of travel. Last year, I traveled 8 times around the world, in the equivalent 8 times around the world, about 200,000 miles on Delta. And I give speeches and seminars to agribusiness groups, producer groups, and sometimes students will be in there. And then the other part of my life is we're an agriculture producer. We were just discussing you have a cow-calf operation. We have a cow-calf operation. We also have a hay operation. There's quite a little demand here in Virginia for both small square bales and also round bales. And my son and I are involved with that. He works for Deere. And one of the things that's real interesting, he's built up a nice customer base. But our signature business, 24 years ago, uh, uh, we started Homestead Creamery. And we've taken 6 small dairy farms, about 75 to 125 cows, and we process the milk, sell it in the old-fashioned glass bottle. Guess where the glass bottles come from? Canada. Stampick over in Ontario, Canada. And we sell premium ice cream, so real good stuff. And we just came off eggnog and custard. And the 27-year-old that launched the business and the 40-year-old Our first year in sales was about 600,000. This year, 15 million in sales. And so I kind of come to you as an academic, but also a person who travels. But let's put it this way, signing on the bottom line on large loans is also in there, and that's probably why I've got some gray hair. So that was a lot about my background, but I wanted people to know I come from those three dimensions.
Oh, beautiful. I love it. You know what? I admire you and how much you travel and all your speaking. I'm also a little bit tired listening to all your air miles. Wow. That's
Wow.
great.
Yeah.
Okay. So I just want to keep on asking you all about your life. I'm sure we could do a couple hours about that. So interesting. But I want to dive in because I know you have a lot of wealth of knowledge to share with our audience. And I was listening to you present, and
Mhm.
I heard the term roller coaster economics. And at that point, you were saying that's what we're in. Are we still in roller coaster economics? And do you want to explain that a little bit?
Yeah, we are definitely in it. And what happens is we can go right from the best years to the worst years. Another thing, we have this volatility both on the cost side, now on the interest rate side, but also on the price side in extremes. And what's causing this is what I call global forces. One of the global forces is we're moving to deglobalization. And it's important both sides of the border because down here we export about $1 in $5 of net farm income. Up in Canada, of course, you do as well. And as we go to this deglobalization, you get uncertainty in trade, you get uncertainty in geopolitical issues. You think about this, Tracy, one half of the world population will go through a major election this year being 2024. Some of them are already preset, like Russia and even in India, but it creates a lot of uncertainty, and that uncertainty creates psychology in the marketplace that gives us this roller coaster economics. Of course, one of the things that it'll drive us to is emotional decision making, and people oftentimes are afraid of volatility. Volatility can be your friend if you position your business to be able to capitalize on it and position your business to capitalize on it. Sometimes you just do the basics, whether it's football, basketball, hockey. Oftentimes, in the good times, we get away from the basics, but I really feel that we're coming into an era in agriculture, both sides of the border, that we're really going to have to concentrate on the basics. We're going to have to position for this volatility. And the other thing that I'm sure you're experiencing, we're seeing our prices come up, but those little stubborn inflated costs don't come off as fast. And then we have elevated interest rates. And so it creates those razor thin margins. But one of the things I've been telling the groups, since the first year I've been out on the road, this era, you're going to see a widening gap of profitability. There's going to be a set of producers that really get it, and they will, show a profit. The others, they're going to struggle a little bit, and a lot of it comes to what I call business and financial IQ. In other words, you got to be able to not only plan, you got to strategize, but the key I find is executing on the plan and then monitoring that plan. And that's the one, those are the two elements that a lot of producers don't do because, oh, we got to get the crop. Well, we got cow calving out here and different things like this. Sometimes you got to just kind of step back and pay attention to those elements as well.
I love that you said that. And actually, business farm management IQ is one of two reasons I launched a show. Number one was farm succession.
Hmm.
As we all know in farming, we've heard a lot of stories of succession gone bad because there was no planning.
Hmm.
So I started this because I said, in this day and age, there's enough information, enough amazing guests like you to teach farmers how to do this. No excuse. Maybe previous generations, sure. But
Hmm.
going forward, no excuse.
Hmm.
Looping back around to what you said, producers are busy getting the crop in, taking care of the animals. Sometimes the pencil sharpening and that stuff, they're like, "Ugh." So I started this to bring people on to give the gold nugget of the ideas that can help them with their farm business. So I just wanted to jump in there because what you said is so, so pivotal.
And can I give you a shout out? And one of the things that I'm really finding, this is what kind of keeps my motor going at my age, your generation of agriculture producers, farmers and ranchers are really getting the importance of the business and paying attention to the business and the financials. And I'm finding that they're a step ahead of my generation, previous generations. And so I give you a shout out for that. And again, I applaud at your work because it's definitely needed because we have a tendency to focus on the urgent rather than the important. And uh, and again, it's very easy to get caught into that trap.
Oh, absolutely. Okay. So the foundation is set for the conversation. I would like to quickly ask you about opportunities to
Mhm.
focus on some positive, and then I know we're going to dive in on some threats and some things that producers really need to be aware of. So, why don't we chat opportunities before we pivot into threats and interesting stuff here?
And it's I like the way you framed that because oftentimes in my conferences, everybody wants to talk about the challenges and the threats. Let's look at the cup half full and see some of the opportunities. What are some of the opportunities? I'm looking at it. Your
Thank
generation.
Thanks.
And one of the things that I'm finding is this next generation of younger producers, you're very entrepreneurial. Uh, you'll have side gigs that bring in income. You'll do things a little bit different. And, it's not only bringing the income, but it helps you network with other individuals and people picking up new ideas. I do about 12 young farmer rancher multiple day conferences. We just got off one this week. And it just is so exciting to see the younger generation embrace this. And by the way, sometimes it's not the younger generation. We had three individuals I called boomerangers. Who are the boomerangers? They went off and worked in business industry, teaching or whatever. One was a doctor for a number of years. He wants to go, come back at 45, 50 years of age and try his hand at agriculture. And it brings that whole new mindset. I'll give you an example. I was in a place called Bad Axe, Michigan. Believe me, there's a place called Bad Axe, Michigan. And I had two people from the Ford Motor Company that had an organic grain farm. And I said, well, what were the skill sets transferable? And they said, following standard operating procedures and following it through. And they said it was a very, very easy type of transition. So if you can't get excited about that, you're probably in the wrong, type of business. And again, what we're finding is the other element is that the people that will follow it, and I got to tell you, it's about being a 5%er. It's
Mm.
being just a little bit better in production, operational efficiency, but still being effective. You got to be careful. You can bean count too much. In other words, you can, hit the bottom line too much, but you still got to be effective. But also in finance, marketing, and risk management, which we talked about. But you know what? The big element is opportunity in agriculture. People are really astute at what I call human resource skills. I was going through my old neighborhood before Christmas up in upstate New York, and I was driving around the rental car, and I says, "Yeah, these farmers right here, when I was growing up, they were independent. And they didn't want to deal with people. They liked their cows and their crops. But the ones that survived, they were interdependent and they had good, people skills. And I'm not talking about hiring labor, but working with your lender, working with working with the public, uh, working with the marketplace. Another big one that I'm starting to see is more value added. And the deal, both in Tucson and also the deal here in Austin, Texas, where we had Canadians in there, more and more are looking at avenues to provide value added, kind of like what we do in our creamery. And boy, that is very exciting. And it's kind of that entrepreneurial type of mindset. The other opportunity that I see, and we're doing it on our farms in Virginia, soil and water health. is going to be a major, major mega trend. And I heard some producers. I was working out the other day in the health club down there at the conference, and they said, "Yeah, it was dry here in I call it Minnesota, but it was dry here in Minnesota. But we still yield it out. You know what it is? It is soil and water health and seed technology. And so, having those skill sets is very, very critical. And it's like a flywheel. You do things effective, it'll just spin your profits up. But you know what? You'll still have a life, a balanced lifestyle. So those are two or three places that I see um, the opportunities out there, and I could go on and on. Oh, one final big trend that I'm seeing, more women in agriculture. And it's real interesting. Give you this stat. Down here in the States, $68 trillion worth of wealth is going to change hands. That's the total economy between now and 2040. One third is owned by females. By 2040, two-thirds will be owned by females. Of course, females outlive the males, but more and more females are operating and managing the business. And it brings a different mindset to the skill set. And so, again, I could go on and on, but those are some of the opportunities, the cup half full.
I love it. In our industry, as you know, and I would say the world in general, it's very easy with media and how easy we access social media to just get overwhelmed with
Yep.
the negative. Because, well, what's the media saying? If it bleeds, it leads.
Yeah.
They are incentivized to publish stuff that scares people, gets them to click. So it can be overwhelming. So I'm happy that you shared that. There is so much potential in this industry.
And,
Absolutely.
and I'm glad you brought that up because we're having a conversation here. And one of the things that I really stress in my seminars is manage the things that you can control, manage around the uncontrollables. And I'll just give you an example. You can't manage Ottawa. We can't manage Washington, D.C., Moscow, or Beijing. You spend your body has X amount of energy. And if you're just watching all that stuff and you're constantly on your technology, on that stuff, that energy is just going to go down a rat hole. And so what you got to do is channel that energy over to things that you can control. And sometimes what you need is guide dogs. In other words, you need some folks to kind of get you out of that rut, put you over into this avenue. And you know, I got to tell you, as I told a group yesterday, I had a couple of people, younger folks, kind of on their, cell phones and different things like that. Sometimes you got to shut those off 2 or 3 hours a day and hear the silence. And oftentimes I tell people, you grew up with your grandparents from a farm, and of course I did. Sometimes we'd have those long talks on the back porch, on those summer nights. Of course, the sun doesn't go down up your way until, 10:30, 11 o'clock, just sitting there and talking rather than just be engrossed in all the technology. So one of the things is there's an old song by Junior Brown, the country singer, "Shut Up and Drive." Sometimes what you got to do is shut your technology off and basically drive your life.
Love it. Thank you for sharing that. Okay. So, why don't we switch into getting producers on their toes? As we mentioned before, it's fairly volatile these days. Can you share what you see as a 30-foot view of the biggest threats to agriculture? Let's say now, I mean, looking 10 years from now, I don't think we even live in that world. I would say like now and near future.
Yeah. I'll tell you one of the things, and and I hope nobody takes this wrong, but on the whole green energy movement, uh, it goes through green energy and AI, artificial intelligence. You go through three stages. We're just gone through the infatuation stage. Oh, everybody's got to do this, do this, do this. By the way, we're moving now into the disillusionment stage. Matter of fact, go to Europe, a term's called greenlash. People are just saying, hey, it's great to have all the green energy movement, but look at China, look at India. They're putting in coal-fired plants, et cetera, et cetera. And so people are starting to lash back, and economics is still very, very important. And one of the things that I would tell you is I know a lot of people are approaching. I know some of your taxes on you all up there because I talked to some of the Canadian producers, and boy, when they told the US producers, they go, wow, I really feel this is kind of a threat because we have more and more of the population that really doesn't understand how the agriculture industry really benefits the environment out there. And so we get all these rah-rah movements with a lot of subsidy into it. And you know what my big theme is? Uh, is it going to be profitable or in the black, green without government subsidy? And and I think that's a real threat to individual farms, but our industry, but worldwide, we're starting to see some backlash. Real interesting, this thing on AI, artificial intelligence. I want to give you a little perspective. In about 2018, AI had a human IQ of about 80, and then by 2020 it was 100. Do you know what it is now as we turn 2024? 124. By 2028, it'll be 1200. Big
Oh,
topics of discussions in the my 2 week deals here is the whole thing of data and how data is going to be used and who has ownership of data. And see, the agriculture industry is going to be one of the industries that faces itself first. But then people are saying, you know, there are some advantages of this. But then as we go more high tech, uh, we're more vulnerable. Again, you're going to ask me about black swans. One of the things that really concerns me, we're going to have a high tech 9/11 or Pearl Harbor. In other words, and what we've got to kind of think through as an industry, but individual producers, what happens if a satellite goes out? What happens if, you know, our technology goes down? And so these are some of the threats that I kind of see out there. And then, of course, the threat is as we go deglobalization, what about our agriculture trade alliances? I'm a big believer, and again, I'm not just saying it because I'm with you here today. We need a North American strategy, Canada, United States, and Mexico. Hey, we're 29% of the world economy, over 500 million people, and we got to work as a North American bloc out here. We're very powerful as a bloc. But the problem is you've got disjointed, you know, strategies in our political systems and different things. And what you have is you have to have an economic heart attack to bring people back in together. So those are kind of some of the threats along with the geopolitical agendas. And of course, we have war, you know, in the Middle East, and you have one in Ukraine. Isn't it interesting as you look at the war in the Ukraine? Putin's strategy basically there is to wear the West down, and he's doing it. And you know we've set precedents in the past on that. But remember, everybody said, "My goodness gracious, uh, we aren't going to have the wheat supply of Ukraine, et cetera, et cetera." Do you see how quickly all of that was replaced by other countries, including Russia? And so, what I'm trying to say is um, you talk about threats, they're multi-layered, and of course, the green energy, the AI threat, but the deglobalization. And then, you know what, the big threat is coming? Southern Hemisphere. And so I told the group yesterday, you take Brazil, it's adding acreage equal to the half of the state of Illinois every year. And everybody says, oh, they're tearing up the rainforest. No, it's the grassland. They got the potential to do that for the next 10 to 15 years. If we aren't careful, North America, and I'm including all three of our countries, we could be and be quickly, in which we are, becoming the secondary supplier. In other words, Asia and China is going to go there first, us second. Now, if they don't have supply, they come to us. And so these are some of the threats that I wished our ag industry, but also our leaders really need to address to position our industry so that, you know, we can serve the world out there. Now, I could go on and on, but those are some of the elements that I see.
this is brilliant. I wish you would. I'm like, don't stop talking.
Well,
It's so
we don't
interesting.
want to bore we don't want to bore
No,
our listeners.
everything's changing so fast. And you look 5, 10, 15, 20 years ago, and you'll know better than I do on this, but it just seems like things change quick now and it's a little more volatile and
Yeah.
looking at changing powerhouses and changing alliances. I mean,
Oh,
we'll
yeah.
get pretty political there, but that's some interesting stuff that you brought up. And geez, if we did a 4-hour episode on alliances, structures, partnerships, politics,
Yeah.
it would be amazing, right?
Yeah, no, and it would be, and again, I don't me I kind of rambled and went in different directions.
Oh,
That's
that's
what happens
great.
when you have to sleep in an airport, which I did the other night. But the whole thing is, it brings back a skill set that's real important. I was on a program with Sherry Kohl. She was the Oklahoma Sooners women's basketball coach, and I had a great discussion. Of course, I played coach basketball. She said, it's not how smart you are. People often say, "Oh, that's a smart person." She says, "I like the person who is interconnected, can kind of connect the dots." And that's one of our issues that we have today. Sometimes we get in our silos and we don't connect the dots. And so they'll say, "Well, this person's very intuitive." Uh, it's not necessarily smart. They know how to kind of connect information, connect dots, connect people out there. And I think that's going to be very, very important. But again, let me share with you as we conclude down this section, channel your energy toward those opportunities and the things you can control, manage around these elements. And somebody will say, one of your watchers of the program will say, "What's he talking about?" Well, maybe this is where you can use a marketing program or crop insurance or some of the various programs to kind of you know bridge that risk out there. And so you kind of have to think a little bit outside the box.
Well, I'm glad you said that. And I'm going to throw this in there to bridge the manager energy and opportunities. And you said it. What we focus on, we know this as psychology, what we focus on grows, right? And
Mhm.
I have found myself over the last couple of years with the pandemic, everything that happened, losing my focus for the first time in my life. And I am like laser focused. And I lost my focus, and you lose your energy. And here's the thing, I went down the rabbit holes, got sucked into that world's ending energy, and it's terrible. It doesn't feel good and it wastes time. But the funny thing is, for the amount of time, if you're sucked into trying to control the politics of your country, for the same amount of time that you're spending on social media sharing posts, you can start a page for your farm, start promoting your farm, and selling beef right to the public for the
Uh,
same amount of energy, right?
no, exactly. For example, I was telling the group the other day, we use genomics and we actually sell direct to consumer. We collaborated with my former student who's a veterinarian, and people desire this trait and this trait, and they see our Angus cattle. We have the Angus cattle. We, of course, we do AI when we can, and again, you could put your energy towards something like that. It could be in the cropping industry or just sit there and worry. The other thing I've been telling groups when you do planning, and we did this at the creamery, we talk about ad. One thing I want to give your viewership is this, one or two or three things you're going to eliminate.
Ooh,
And I really find that what I call minimal mindset, try to, uh, eliminate some of those things. That has to be part of that plan that you're talking about.
I love that. Okay, beautiful. Okay, you mentioned this a little bit in the last part. You
Mhm.
mentioned Black Swan. That's
Yeah.
actually the first time I ever seen you. You were doing a presentation on Black Swan. I'm like,
Uh-huh.
what is this?
Yeah.
And can you share what a Black Swan event is and what that means? And do you see any coming up?
Well, the whole element is a black swan is an unusual event. It usually comes out of nowhere. For example, 9/11 is a classic example. Of course, the pandemic. Well, I'll just give an example. It hit you all. Was the mad cow. Now, I was in Canada when that actually broke out, and these are events that just kind of change the whole type of paradigm. And so I have black swans, but I got a new term called a gray rhino. A gray rhino is something that's right in front of you, but you don't do anything about it. I'll just give you an example right now. The world is laden in debt. The United States has a lot of debt. We're not doing anything about it. And our debt went from 20 trillion to 30, it's now 34 trillion in 3 years. It's not sustainable. And so the whole thing is, I'm actually more afraid of the rhino than I am the swan. And but I'll give you an example. I really feel that our technology is going to get challenged out here, and you got to, the conflicts we have going on in Europe and the Middle East, and potentially Philippines or Taiwan or Croatia. What it does, it accelerates technology, and and one of the things is that, people start looking at different ways that we can, kind of take down. And one of the reasons the black swan occurs is oftentimes our security agencies are in silos and they don't talk to each other. And so I could definitely see that. And of course, we're constantly threatened by potential diseases that can hit, whether it's our livestock industry or cropping industry and different things like that. And again, I go way back. You're usually going to get hit with a black swan about once out of every decade or 15 years. Okay. And technology is the one I challenge a lot of our bigger companies. For example, our machinery companies, I really challenged this week and I had some of the executives in there. I says, hey, we got all this technology. We don't have the technicians to deliver the technology because, again, they're caught in their silos. They're geeks. They don't understand the front line. And if you think about this, now I'm being the bad guy. All of a sudden, I start attacking this technology at critical harvesting times or critical planting times. And I can change a whole host of things very, very quickly. And so one of the things that I tell people, you can be high tech and be innovative, but you could be low tech and be innovative and still be successful. And that's what makes our industry, and I say it's our industry, real exciting because it's not one method that fits all or one size that fits all. So that's examples of some of the black swan potentials that I could see. The one that scares me right now is the gray rhino and debt issue. And it's just uh, and it's happening worldwide. We just pumped up this world economy. I know what's happening in Canada on land values. You know what's happening in the United States. We artificially kept interest rates down to zero from 2008 to 2020, inflated our stock market, our housing market, inflated our land markets. And that one right there created all this debt. And what will happen is everybody will say it'll be a black swan. Well, it's right in front of us, but we didn't do anything about it because, again, people don't want to make the hard choices from a public standpoint.
Mm, well said. Okay, so the gray rhino is trapped
Yeah, gee,
in the
the
black
gray,
swans.
it's so funny. I just started talking about the gray rhino in the past 3 or 4 months, and everybody's starting to pick up on it. And to think about it, and you just mentioned it. What's a gray rhino in a lot of agriculture or small businesses? Transition management.
Mm,
Why? Because we don't want to think about that. Oh, I was on a farm the other day, 65-year-old, wife's 55, we'll just say almost 20 million assets, 3 million liabilities. I go, do you have a will? No. And I go, that's a classic example of a gray rhino. It's right in front of us. We're not doing anything, about it. And so we can have the gray rhinos from a big standpoint, but we can also have the gray rhinos, you know, down in the right in our business, looking right in front of us.
funny, I was thinking of how I'm going to title this episode when I publish it. I was going to say Black Swan coming. And then now I'm going, Gray Rhino tramples the Black Swan.
That's a pretty boy, you're creative. I
Oh,
like that. Gee, I'll have to put that in my PowerPoint.
oh, there we go.
Uh,
Okay. So I think this is actually flowing perfectly. And stuff you've said there, where you've focused on the opportunities and really did a call to action on focus. You
Mhm.
can control your focus. So we did opportunities. We chatted about threats, Black
Mhm.
Swan, Gray Rhino. Um, do you want to talk about some biggest mistakes? And then we'll move into some advice you have for producers. So, what do you see as the biggest mistakes? And you've touched on them a little bit, but do you want to go there?
Yeah, yeah, and you know what it is? It's overlooking the fundamentals, the basics, and and what happens is, can I give you in marketing an example?
Please.
People are looking for home runs, but it's base hits, and I'll hear people say, "Well, I left money on the table because I marketed too quick." Folks, it's okay to leave money on the table. Uh, and you know what the basic is? They don't know their cost of production. They don't know their break evens. They don't know their cost of production break evens in a dynamic environment. For example, at the creamery and businesses, we do a best average worst case scenario. Uh, but our management team challenged me to do the best of the best and just to put it in my face. And they did it. But all joking aside, it's a lot of the basics. It's not doing a cash flow. Oh, we did a cash flow, but you're doing it once a year. No, you got to do it quarterly, even if you're a grain farmer, cow calf operation, et cetera, et cetera. And what I find is people a big mistake is looking at the financials once a year for tax reasons. And remember, very few businesses ever go broke paying income tax. But what will happen is we wait right to the end of the year, and then we get very, very emotional because Revenue Canada is going to get all of this, or Uncle Sam's going to get all of this. And so that is a mistake that I really, really find out there. And so it's just a lot of these little basics that I find. And then, of course, for the longer term, is this whole thing of transition management. My boomer generation, we're right in the healthy stage of our retirement life. But then about 5 years from now, we're going to start getting challenged. And what I find is oftentimes we don't move into transition management because we don't want to give up that control. And as I told the former student of mine who was I was on his farm, I says, you know, to keep control, you got to give up control.
Mm.
And and all of a sudden, and then you know what I challenged them? Back to another mistake. Uh, they were unfocused, and so I challenged them. I says by New Year's Eve, I want to. They had family coming in that weren't part of the business, and I says, I want you to all sit down individually and articulate your business, family, and personal goals. And then I said, if you want to put mental, physical, spiritual, that's fine too. And I says, I'd like that report by before we turn into the first year. And, my former student that was with me, he says, his name was Ralph. Yeah, oh, there's no way this is going to happen. Well, come 9:30, New Year's Eve, my coach, who was 85, he says, Happy New Year, Dave, kind of like that. And well, there we go. 11:43, guess what? All their goals came in all separately and the whole thing. But again, they were potentially making a big mistake that not only would hurt them financially, but it would also hurt them. If they don't do this, they're going to have Thanksgiving or holiday together or, various events. And so, but the big challenge was I'm giving up control. Here's my quote for you. To keep control, you got to give up control. So those are some of the basic mistakes. And then the basic, I didn't have a will.
That's funny. That's a beautiful quote. And I've seen many families torn apart by lack of succession planning. And the funny thing, you nailed it. They wanted to keep control.
Um,
They wanted to make sure the farm stayed a farm. But the ironic part is, by them not giving up control, in the end, all that land is no longer staying in the family for the most part, and it's gone. What he wanted as his goal
Mhm.
He just shot himself in the foot because he wouldn't give up control.
Yeah, no, and it is, and see, I use the personality assessments, I use DISC, but you can use many of them. And he classic high D. Uh, if that's a door that's shut and locked, he'll bust through it, and but in defense, he put all of his energy building this business. And and he had to be in control. Now you're coming into a phase you've got to kind of relinquish it, delegate it, et cetera, et cetera. And that's why I got to tell you, people go, well, I need to get an estate plan, get a lawyer in here, an accountant in here, and they think they're going to do it overnight. It was real interesting in the Tucson meeting and in the Austin meeting. The farmers had to fill out their ranchers fill out their profile and some of the things they were doing. Many of them said, "Well, I'm either starting or in the middle or at the end of a transition plan." And many of them commented it took 3 years.
Wow. Wow. I believe
Yeah,
it.
and another thing, oh, it's going to cost me this. You have to look at those plans not as a cost, but an investment. You also, one of the things that you've got to do, you've got to prepare for it because again, you're working with an accountant, a lawyer, a facilitator, getting that information together and organized, you can save yourself a lot of money in doing your plan. So I know we kind of went down that bunny trail there, and we went from Winnipeg out to Brandon on that one in the middle of a snowstorm.
Can I
With
take
the
you out
bird.
to Ontario now with a little story? Do you have a moment? Can I take you on a trail?
Yeah.
Um, you said high D. Okay. One of my first jobs, I went to sell cars and they trained me on disc. So you said high D personality. Funny thing, I don't know if I hide it good enough. I'm high D.
Oh
So
yeah.
when I talk to my guests on the show, funny thing is, and I'll say it because that transition planning game, it is 100% human nature. That's all you're battling because the
Mhm.
skills are pretty straightforward. And when I talk to Elaine and my other guests, I actually, because I'm a high D, I can totally relate to my grandpa, my that generation, any generation that doesn't want to give up control, because I get it. I've worked so hard to build our farm with my husband and my business. So and I think it's a strength here when I'm talking to guests and communicating that to our audience because we're so proud of what we've built. We put our life into it, right? It is hard to want to give up control, and I get that, and I own it on camera here to help others that are listening because it's not easy.
Well, and the whole thing is the people that view you appreciate that because you're real direct because you're a D. But the people that are high C are frustrated. They want more detail, and we aren't going to give them more detail. And so that no, it does frustrate.
Totally.
And Elaine and I, of course, we've done programs together, over the years, and we'll kind of laugh and joke about it. But you said something that's really important. A lot of transition management is a lot of psychology and sociology brought together by communications. And, it's interesting. Of course, I fly a lot. And you think about it, they say three things in flying: aviate, navigate, and communicate. And the aviation is the technical skills, the navigation is going around, various obstacles, but it's that communication. And boy, when you get into a bad problem where part of the plane flies off and ends up in Bob's backyard, one of the things is you've got to be able to communicate. And so those are three critical elements in that. And yeah, I pictured you as a D.
Oh,
You know what? No, because you're an entrepreneur, and D's are classic entrepreneurs. You got a secondary, it would either be an I or a C. It's definitely not an S. Probably your husband. Your husband, it would probably be an S. Probably an S. I don't know. He'll compliment you on
yeah.
some certain things.
If he was a D, we'd be like this. He
Yeah,
is very analytical and
yeah,
CNS.
yeah.
CNS.
He slows you down, and
Totally.
that's good. And
Yeah.
then you speed him up. And folks, you're all hearing this. This is something that's very, very critical because sometimes you say, "Oh, I can't get along with my wife or husband, or et cetera, et cetera." You can't get along with their personality.
you know what? Because we're so different, and but here, it is relevant. And we're married and we work with farming family here. So this type of stuff is as important as talking about details. But because we're so different, we complement each other and we make a great team. And then all bases get covered in the farm business, right?
And it's interesting you brought it up. One of the top 10 things professionally, I went through disc in 1989 at the Ferguson Institute in Tulsa, Oklahoma. I lost 5 pounds of sweat. I go, this thing knows me, you know. But it was one of the best things that I've ever done. And I taught entrepreneurship here at Virginia Tech. And I had the women's basketball coach come in and lecture. And she goes, well, what's this disc personality? I told her. She started using it in recruiting basketball players because you got to work as a team.
Oh,
And then Pat Summitt, who is the winningest coach in basketball here in the United States, she started using it. And what we're starting to find is putting that culture together, that chemistry together, because you can create a what I call a stylistic culture, and nothing ever gets done. So, hey, that is one of the best management practices as we moved into that I think anyone could do. It'll cost you 35 or $50, but it'll be one of the best things and do it all separately. And I can tell you, D's do not like to take the assessment because "Oh, I don't have time for this."
don't tell me what to do.
Yeah, there you go.
Oh,
Uh,
beautiful. And so very relevant to farming, to business, and to family farm operations. So I'm glad we went on to that little rabbit trail out to Ontario.
Well, and you know what was interesting in Myrtle Beach, my colleague here, Dr. Alex White, had just put the group through the disc. And so I got delayed and I came in the next day. And it was so interesting. I had a father son D. They were sitting at both. We kind of had a table where they were there, but they were on the opposite end, and it was real interesting. I said, "You guys are when you get in a fight, you really get in a fight." No, yeah, but it was so interesting. We could just identify all the people. Alex and I drove back last night, and we were just identifying the people around the room, and it was just amazing. I got to tell you, folks, if you're watching this podcast, uh, that is one of the, I would say, 10 things that you need to do in 2024.
Yeah, and I think it's online and like you said, cheap, right?
Yeah, yeah, but you need somebody
Farmlist.com.
like yourself or someone to kind of facilitate it because it just won't tell you. Sometimes what you got to do, you do it as a family or you do it. I love to do it in presentations because I love to do bankers because usually they're high C's and
Oh,
it really gets people kind of thinking out there. But it helps you not only in your professional, but in your family and your personal life.
totally. I love it. Okay, let's marry this all
Yep.
together with some advice on what producers should do. With the last couple years, we know it's been challenging.
Yeah.
Hopefully, we don't look at some gray rhinos and black swans, but let's get our farm businesses into tip top shape. What's your best advice for farmers?
Well, first of all, I would start out just like I did with the farm couple. Establish your goals, business, family, and personal. 1 year goals under, you know, 1 year and under is your short term, 3 to 5. I only go about 3 to 5 now because things are changed. And I could give you the 80-16-4 rule. 80% of all Americans have no goals, 16% keep them in their mind, only 4% write them down. If you want to be a 5% or something 96% of people don't do, write your goals down. And I was indoctrinated with that way back in my youth because we had this organization called the FFA. It was very goal centered. Our basketball coach was we set the national winning streak in the United States in high school basketball. He was very, very goal oriented. That's number one. It's simple. A lot of people, and it's perfect time of year. It's coals can be up there. We're getting nasty weather. Good time to set your goals. You know what the second thing is? Do a cash flow. It's 80% of a business plan. And you know what you got to think? You got to think through your operational plan, your production plan, put some numbers to it, finance, do the best, average, and worst case. But not only do the plan, but monitor it. At the creamery, We're monitoring it weekly. One of the best things that we've ever done. So all of a sudden we start, whoa, what's happened to sales this week or what's going on here? You can tweak and make adjustments. And I find people will say we need to develop a business plan. That cash flow can go there. And again, do your best, average, and worst case scenario and monitor. That is definitely one of the things. The other thing is a risk management and marketing plan. Of course, you're a little different up in Canada than we are here in the States, but that include crop insurance, a marketing plan, when you're going to market, how you're going to market. Very, very important. Here comes the big one, financial liquidity. And I can just hear the people have heard me before in Canada just laughing. And I got to tell a funny story. I was up in I don't know, it might have been Winnipeg or Saskatoon or Moose Jaw or somewhere up there. And all of a sudden a guy came in and he says, "Well, I know what you're going to talk about." And I says, "Well, what am I going to talk about?" He says, "Well, you need to build working capital and cash." And I says, "Well, why'd you come?" He says, "Well, I needed to be reminded of it." But with volatility and thin margins, building that working capital, and it's just current assets minus current liabilities and includes some of the cash in there. Uh, that is the secret sauce. Guess what? Only 10% of businesses really concentrate on that. And it's a basic because what will happen is when you get those profits, uh, part of it, I call it the 60-30-10 rule. 60% of your profits go to get efficient, but still be effective and grow your business. 30% build working capital, but you're going to have to pay Revenue Canada. You're going to have to pay taxes, but that is your buffer. And then 10% do what you want to do with it because life's short. And people watching our webcast or podcast here today are going to say, "Yeah, I've heard Kohl say that." And when I say working capital and cash, what do you often hear? Working capital and cash is king. Well, I got set straight up in Canada, Woodstock, Ontario. An RBC lady came up to me and she goes, "Dr. Kohl, I want to challenge you. And you're saying working capital is king and cash is king." She goes, "I believe it's queen." I
Oh,
go, "Oh, okay." I wanted to hear her out. And she goes, "Do you ever play chess and checkers?" And by the way, growing in upstate New York, off the lakes, we'd get lake effect snow, 70 inches of snow. So we'd be out of school. So I'd play with grandpa and grandma, chess and checkers. And she says, "You want your business and your life is like a chessboard or a checkerboard with various moves. Most important player is the queen. The queen's there to block adversity, take advantage of opportunity." Boy, when she said that, all my PowerPoints have changed from cash and working capital is king to queen. And I want to thank the RBC lady for that. But it just makes perfect sense. And I got to tell you, whether it's a country, a household, a business, or personal finances, one of the things is where's the choke point? It's usually liquidity. It's usually liquidity, and you'll see it every time. So that is something very important. And another best practice is have an advisory team.
mm,
Need some people there in the boxes to kind of help you, kind of coach you. And sometimes it can be a peer. Sometimes it can be your banker, your lender, it could be a consultant, etc. And if you don't threaten to fire them at least 2 or 3 times, they're probably not challenging you enough. No, I'm serious. It's kind of like transition management. If you don't threaten to fire that person, Elaine and I have talked about that before 2 or 3 times, they're probably not asking you the tough questions because guess what? They're going to put you on the spot and have it. That's the fastest growing trend south of the border with young farmers now.
coaching
uh,
or
Advisory teams forming
advisories.
and,
Okay.
and occasionally meeting. And by the way, sometimes they'll meet face to face. We meet face to face, but we use Zoom to bring our person in from Omaha, Nebraska, uh, to be part of it, totally outside the industry, because they'll give you a different look. So that would be one. And then have a good set of lenders and suppliers. And remember, it's not about the lowest interest rate. Do they understand your business? Do you understand your industry? And can they help explain some of the numbers that make sense oftentimes we'll put those financials together to get the loan. And but understand those finances, and maybe the lender knows how you kind of compare with other folks, et cetera, et cetera. It's designed to make your business better. So those are 4 or 5 things that, on those cold winter days up there, when the, days are short, think about some of those things that you're doing.
I love it. Beautiful advice. Okay, I'm excited for this. I have a few really fun, quick questions.
Uh,
I want to get to know you a little bit better. So, first question. What is something you're really fired up about, personally or professionally? And it could be fired up good or fired up like I'm angry and taking action on this. I'm curious.
yeah. What gets me fired up and gets kind of a passion going is actually working with young farmers and ranchers, and then seeing them 2 or 3 or 4 years later, they're implementing our business IQ, and they're saying, this really helped me, and this was real successful. You know what? Gets me kind of fired up, having a banker put on an evaluation that global economics wasn't important to his banker or his customer. I'd like to have that guy or lady, uh, because it's really fired me up to do a better job of explaining how global economics comes right down. You got to think globally, act locally, and brings it right back down. Another thing that'll get me fired up, and I had this happen recently in a seminar, right in the front row, 2 people constantly on their technology, not even paying any attention to my talk. I called them out. And, I basically said, get a life and get off your technology. I finally found out, and this was an audience of 400, uh, found out it was the 2 leaders of the group, and I'm not going to be invited back. But at my age, I don't care. But
That's
that kind of gets me fired up, because one of the things is sometimes they're missing the world.
yeah.
Yeah, and so I those are 2 things when you ask me that question, that kind of gets me going.
Oh, I love it. Good. Okay, this I'm a big reader, so I'd love to
And,
hear a book or video or podcast or show that has changed your life.
okay, and I'm going to give you a series of books
Okay.
that, and some of them are old, but one of them's new. It's called Psychology of Money.
Ooh,
And oftentimes your investment philosophy, your debt philosophy is when you were born and what was happening with your parents. My parents, of course, third grade, grade 9 education, Great Depression, etc. So I was born and brought up to be conservative, and it's carried right over into the rest of my life. And probably I've left money on the table and done things that book, I recommended it to one of my meteorologist friends, Eric Snodgrass, Nutrient Management. He's a avid reader. He read it twice, and he said it was real good. It's called The Psychology of Money, a book that we had to read in grad school at Cornell. It was Megatrends by John Nesbitt. And the premise behind this book was, the more you go high tech, the more you got to have high touch. I wished all the major equipment companies would require that as a reading, and different things, because what's happening is we're missing out on the high touch people. In other words, that human aspect out there. And it's an old book. Uh, One of the things that I would have to tell you, and it's required reading for transition management, is The Ultimate Gift by Jim Stovall. And there's a movie in Disney about this, but he's a blind man. And I've recommended this over the years. And actually, he sent Alicia and I a nice personal note. But it's about a young person that's going to inherit a lot of wealth, but he has to go through 10 challenges of life. 3 of them are actually agriculturally oriented, because if you think about all this inheritance that we're going to get, as I was sitting across from a Division I basketball player, and well, I was in Boston. I'll just leave it at that. They're making 300,000 a year now in college and university, selling their likeness. So I told him, you inherit $100,000. On average, you'll spend it in 17 months and have nothing to show for it. In the defense, this young man sent a nice email thanking me for that. The Ultimate Gift by Jim Stovall. Another one, I follow him. I'm on programs with him. Granted, he has a big ego, but he challenges my thinking. Is The Accidental Superpower by Peter Zion. He does a lot of stuff up in Canada.
Oh,
And
okay.
again, Peter, he just did a new book, the end of the world is just beginning, and it's not what we think it is. It's about going from globalization to deglobalization, et cetera, et cetera. He does little 4-minute clips uh, like this, and I watch him every morning. And you know what's so neat though, Tracy? He'll do them when he's in New Zealand or Australia or in his hotel room or in the airport. So it's not this corporate, glossy, fancy, it's authentic.
Mm.
And I do follow him on out there. I got to tell you, Dr. Alex and I talked about this yesterday. I go, Alex, do you remember that video that I paid $795 back in 1988 when I was teaching at Cornell? Do you remember the name? There was a guy I used to follow, Tom Peters. He wrote, Peters and Waterman wrote the book In Search of Excellence, but he had a great video, Passion for Excellence, and he took 5 companies, FedEx, a baseball team, a bank, and he basically said what made them better than the others. And it was a lot of little simple stuff like they just talk to each other. And he talks about FedEx, and actually we worked on FedEx, and actually Fred Smith interacted with our class with FedEx. But that is an old video. Again, I would still show it now. So those are just some of the things that I've used over the years. And again, I try to read quite a little bit. And there's the whole saying, if you're going to lead, you got to read.
I love it. I was excited to ask you about the books. I'm like, he's going to have some interesting ones. I know it. So,
Had you read some of those?
yeah, some of them I'm familiar with. The Psychology of Money, it's actually on my big bookshelf and it's in my queue. It's coming
Mhm.
up. I haven't got there yet. I'm excited for that one.
And can I suggest to any of your watchers that are going through transition management, that would be one for all the generations to read, because it kind of sets the footing of why don't they want to take on more debt?
Mm,
Why do they want to do this? And so it just lays it out very well.
okay, I think that one's going to move up the queue a little bit
Yeah,
fast
yeah.
now.
By the way, Aaron's got to read that one too. Aaron's your husband, right?
Anthony.
Oh, Anthony.
Yeah,
Gee,
that's
oh,
okay.
see what happens when you don't get sleep in the airport. Sorry about that.
I don't even think I said his name, so don't feel bad. And I wouldn't, you shouldn't even feel bad anyways. Yes, I'll get him to read it
Okay.
because family being on the same page of money,
Mhm,
huge.
mhm.
But spouses, I would say that we can go down a whole nother episode, but we won't. I mean, that's a big
Now,
disharmony in a relationship, right?
now, you know what? I'm going to challenge you. I want to see it. When Anthony goes through it and you go through it, then I want to see a podcast talking about that from both of your standpoint.
Oh,
Oh, so you have Anthony watch this, and that's my challenge to Anthony.
I will, I'll do it. I'll get his perspective, but I don't think I'll ever get him on this camera.
No, I know. I'm having fun with you.
That would be fun though. And you know what? I'm actually thinking about reading it and then doing a quick video for our show
Uh,
about it, like a featured book, if you think it's that good.
oh yeah, it
Yeah.
is. Matter of fact, uh, got it right there.
Oh, there we go. Oh, I'm
Yeah,
so
yeah,
excited.
it's right
Okay.
over on my
Okay, I
shelf.
think I'm starting it tonight.
Yeah. No, no, now come on. It's Friday night, date night.
Oh, jeez. Yeah, we'll have a nice steak. We'll have a chat, and then I'll go read the book.
There you go.
Oh boy.
Um,
Okay. Two last things. Best advice you've ever got and parting words for our audience, and then we'll wrap up.
Best advice I've ever got. Never forget where you came from.
Mm,
You
beautiful.
know, my dad, he says, "You ever think you're important in life?" He goes, "Take a walk in a graveyard."
Oh,
And he said, "Remember, JFK was replaced in 12 minutes." And sometimes we've got to think about where we came from. And we just honored our coach, high school basketball coach, but he was honored in college, and many of us went there. And of course, he taught us discipline. He taught us, all the rigors. But one of the things I'll never forget Murph telling us is never forget where you came from, and make sure you compliment the people that helped you in your journey.
Mhm.
And then he said, important in life is going to be networking and interaction. And actually, I sent him a nice little handwritten letter just recently, just saying, those were a couple of principles that's carried over out there in life. And again, subtle little things, but it's oh, we're too busy. We're on these things and these things. Uh, and by the way, handwritten letter, you don't do a text or an email. You know what handwritten is? Authenticity.
Mm, yeah, beautiful. I love that. Best advice, parting words. I mean, you just shared some good.
Wow. I hit it, and I actually prepared for this, and I guess just the parting words is try to be a 5%er,
Mm,
stick to the basics, concentrate your energies on the things you can control, manage around the uncontrollables, get your financial household in order and working capital, whether it's business, personal, or whatever it is. And remember that working capital in the chessboard, it's a queen. And it's there to block, but it's there to take advantage of opportunities. And I guess the other thing would be goal setting will give you that focus, but get them in writing and check them. And remember, we're moving into an era of agriculture from about 2025, I call it quarter century now, to 2040, where we're going to be very, very interdependent. And uh, remember, your self-worth and your net worth in life will be equal to the people you associate with.
beautiful. Wow. There we go. What a beautiful way to wrap up. You know what? I have been waiting for this interview. I knew it was going to be fantastic, but this was beyond my wildest.
Now, you're making my head big down here.
Remember where you came from,
Yeah,
Dr.
yeah, yeah, there you go.
Even when Tracy says all those beautiful things about you, I'm just joking. You know what? There was so much positivity, so much wisdom in there, things to look out for, things to be on top of, and some just common sense, boots on the ground knowledge. Some beautiful information in there. Thank you.
Oh, no, thank you. And I want to give you a shout out. Thanks for doing this. Uh, Thanks to just the agricultural industry in general, because, there's no successful culture without agriculture. In other words, it's the culture in part of the word agriculture that is very, very critical. And we all play a very, very important role, in that, in our little own way. And appreciate the small things. And I wish you well. Hopefully, sometime we'll be back on the program, and hopefully, I can get up to Canada and do some of the programs I always enjoy. Matter of fact, one of the big honoraries was being at the Brandon Farm Show and being, how they'll have the parade, around, and they allowed me to be one of the representatives of the United States,
Wow.
in that. And I've done that in Calgary at the Stampede and over at the Toronto Exposition. And one of my biggest thrills was uh, actually addressing Parliament a couple of times, and walking down seeing John Diefenbaker as a little kid. I remember him as Prime Minister and different things. I have a lot of respect for Canada.
Thank you. And for those of you guys in the audience, if you want to connect with Dr. David Kohl, we're going to include some links and websites, all kinds of good stuff where they can connect with you. Dr. Kohl, thank you.
No, thank you, and keep up the good work, and you and Anthony have that steak dinner.
We will. Thank you very much. You in the audience, thanks for tuning in. And if you love this as much as I did, like it, share it, comment, get it out there because every single farmer needs to hear this. Thanks, guys. See you next week. Bye bye.